everyone here in the United States. I know this is a little early for my schedule, but we have Lauren Clack with us today on Mavens of Manufacturing, and she is tuning in all the way from South Africa. So I'm super excited to have her join us today. This is episode 188, which is blowing my mind because I can't believe I'm almost at 200 episodes for Mavens of Manufacturing. And before we get started, I do want to wish everyone a happy Martin Luther King Day here in the United States. My challenge to all of you who may be tuning in, instead of taking a quote and pairing it with a Canva meme, please go out, support your Black businesses. There are three that I would like to mention today. One is Black Girls Code. Two is Black Girls Do STEM. And my favorite, Black Girls Do Engineer, with my good friend Cara Branch. They are all working very hard to introduce young Black women into engineering and manufacturing fields. So I just want to shout out those three organizations. You can go to their websites and donate or volunteer your time, as well as sponsor any kind of activity that they have. So make sure you go and do that. Now, let's get to our conversation with Lauren Clack. Hello, Lauren. How are you doing today?
So well, Megan. It's so nice to see you again. So you said early morning for you. It's later in the day for me. So super happy to be here. Thanks for tuning in early.
South Africa is one of the places that I've always wanted to visit. I have a friend, Ingor, that lives there as well. And I've just always had a fascination with Africa in general. Like, I want to go there and go on a safari, and I'm a huge lion fan. Like, I love lions, so I just want to go and hang out with some lions at a safe distance, of course.
I meet a lot of people online, and I always say, come to South Africa, come to Cape Town. I will play your personal tour guide. But yes, it's Africa gets into your soul. So
I have to make plans to bring my kiddos there too, because I think they would have a blast there. But I do want to talk to you. I want to get to know you a little bit more. So you're not generally from the manufacturing engineering world, but I think what you do is highly important, especially with the amount of women that we have in engineering and manufacturing. So for those of you tuning in, here in the United States right now, women represent 30% of the manufacturing and engineering workforce. But that statistic is a little misleading, because when you break it down into the fields like CNC machining, welding, automation, those percentages get significantly smaller. And then when you break it down ethnicity wise, it also gets significantly smaller. And I read an article last week or a couple weeks ago from IndustryWeek, and 1 in 4 women represent management level positions, and then only 12% of women represent C-suite positions. And I did look up a statistic for the global representation of engineers, and we're at 13.7% as of 2023. So why does this matter? Well, we all have read the studies, and we know that when you diversify your workforce, it's just better overall for company culture, productivity, revenue generation. It's better for your numbers, and it's better for us to progress forward as a society. So one of the things that we talk about is how can we really empower women to be confident within their own skill set. So Lauren, that's what we're here to talk with you about. So tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do for a living?
Megan, I help women grow their businesses. And many years ago, I heard someone say, nothing bad happens when women make more money. And it's just something that stuck with me, because it impacts you, your relationships, your family, your community. You can give more. And I built a business around that, and specifically empowering women. And I stand by the fact that more women need a seat at the table. And for the reasons you say, inclusivity, diversity. And I don't do that necessarily within manufacturing and the technical side, but within small business. And often women who are building up that confidence, or haven't necessarily been told their entire life that certain things are possible. And, we're speaking today about confidence and what that is. And ultimately, confidence is the courage to act on your own beliefs and to have that self-assuredness, just being in yourself without the need to look externally and to look for validation outside of ourselves.
So what do you think are some common misconceptions about confidence in male-dominated fields? Because engineering and manufacturing aren't the only male-dominated fields. Like there's construction and there's other industries that have more men in them than engineering and manufacturing. But what do you think are some common misconceptions about confidence in those types of fields?
I think that definitely a misconception is that confidence is aggression or domination in some way. And it's more in your face. Whereas, we know it's absolutely not. And we often think that confidence in those environments is, for women certainly, having to know everything in case you're going to be put to the test. Whereas, and yes, we're talking generalizations, but in general, men don't walk around thinking, I need to know everything. I need to be overly prepared in case someone's going to test me. But as women, we tend to always want to over prepare in case we're going to be asked to step up. There's always that needing to prove ourselves. And I think that comes up a lot in fields that are historically male dominated.
I think one interesting thing is too, and I've heard this from some of my female colleagues, is that when we do have that confidence, sometimes we come across, like you mentioned, we're aggressive or we're emotional or we're too direct, and it's like, well, what else? Like, what do you want the soft side? I've been told that I have an edge and that I need to soften it sometimes, and I'm like, well, why do I need to soften my edge? Like, this is who I am. So it's just interesting on how we hear that a lot more. And I think these conversations are good to have because I do think there's situations where there is an awkwardness between men and women when they try to communicate with one another. And it's not like intentional or like malicious at all. It's just we communicate differently and we are different from our experiences. So I think some of these conversations are good to have so that we can get rid of that awkwardness and be able to have productive conversations. With your work that you've done, are there any unique challenges that women face when it comes to confidence? Like what sort of things does it provide a disadvantage?
I think that certainly in male dominated fields, and that can be tech or manufacturing, it can be historically, finance or something like that. Wherever there's a lack of representation or wherever women have historically been excluded, we suddenly feel less than. And although that is changing, there's this stereotypical societal thing of what it looks like for women in certain fields and what it looks like for men. And why, I don't know, why do we still believe those? Or why are we not trusting our own instincts and our own intuition when we're stepping into environments that sort of make us feel uncomfortable?
Yeah. And so how do those stereotypical expectations really impact women's confidence at work? I could name like a few.
I think that, what we spoke about was that I think it's big, is that you said you've been told you need to sort of temper your edge, but it's balancing those contradictory experiences. So it's you need to be assertive, but don't be aggressive or don't be bossy, because we don't like bossy women. And you must be likable, but don't get overly friendly with the staff, then they won't respect you. And there's just, when we're again dealing with stereotypes, we historically as a gender have felt less than men. And a lot of women will say, oh, no, not me. But I talk to a lot of women in the course of my days, and it's almost universal that there's this imposter syndrome. There's this lack of confidence in ourselves. And yet we are so different. All of us are different. And we all feel this. We all question ourselves. We all doubt ourselves. We all wonder if we could be doing better all the time.
Yeah. We'll get on that subject of imposter syndrome too in a little bit, because that's another thing. And I know that there's some guys out there that have suffered from that as well. But I do want to mention a commencement speech that I heard that I really think everyone should tune into. But I noticed that some of the things too, with the women that I've spoken with who are trying to start their own business, especially within engineering and manufacturing, they question, am I capable of doing this? Do I have enough experience? So getting to that imposter syndrome feeling, but then having the confidence to negotiate their value and setting prices of what their services and products are. And then I've experienced this a couple of times where when I am nice, that gets confused for being flirtatious. And it just makes the whole situation confusing and kind of awkward. And it's like, how do I not come across that? Like, so you have to find like this healthy balance. Cause I've had a few people like, hey, do you want to go out on a date? And it's like, no, I don't.
Right, but this is unique then to women, because we're feeling that we always have to walk the line. We're having to balance that sense of how are we going to be perceived, rather than just being ourselves, and rather than just coming in to do the job that we're there to do or build the business that we wanted to build. We're constantly juggling the preconceived ideas or the perceptions that we have and that other people have of us. So there's so much of that before we even get down to actually doing the work.
Yeah. And it's such an interesting topic, because it's really does need to be discussed, because if we want to continue helping people grow within their careers, or if there are people interested in starting their own business, it does become a checklist of things that you have to check off. And you don't want to give the wrong impression to anyone, and you want to avoid any kind of like disaster. And it's just been an interesting couple of years since I've started Mavens of Manufacturing, but it's been also great because now I know I'm not the only one who's been through those experiences where they're just like, why did these people think that I'm like hitting on them, or why are people questioning why I'm setting my price the way that I am? So it's nice to hear that there's some commonalities there. Do you have a specific story of a client who overcame a confidence barrier through your coaching? Like, what were some of the tips and practices that you were educating them on to really overcome that barrier?
There's one thing that overcomes a lot of barriers in building anything, in moving forward and creating some form of success for ourselves in varying areas. And that is, it comes down to, and it sounds so simple and it's not, taking action. So this one particular client, she has ADHD. She runs her own business. Her name is Vicky. She wasn't meeting her sales targets. Her team was letting her down constantly. And she took a long, hard look at herself and realized something needed to change. Mm-hmm. And there was a lot of avoidance going on. So a lot of fear around whether she could do certain things in the business, whether she had the skills, whether she had the personality. And we just worked on clarifying what it actually was that she needed to do, pushing through the doubt and the fear that inevitably comes up, and taking action. And just taking those actions proves to yourself that you're capable. It creates that confidence, because action makes doubt disappear. Because whether or not you get it right on the first try, you have a result. You either have the result that you wanted, or you have a lesson, you have something that you can work with and tweak and move forward. But doing nothing, procrastination, and sitting in that fear and that lack of confidence is never going to move us forward. We actually have to do something to break through that. So when you're taking that action, you're building that trust, and trust builds confidence.
Do you have a lot of experience with neurodivergent women? Because that's one of the things that because I recently got diagnosed with ADHD, and let me tell you, it was a pain going through life not knowing what the heck was going on, because there were days where I was like staring at my computer for hours on end and not getting things done, and then that just caused such a horrible feeling in my gut, because it's like, why am I getting decision paralysis? Why am I getting distracted?
Self-fulfilling prophecy. You don't do anything, and you just fulfill the thoughts that you're, that negative cycle of, I can't do it, I'm useless, I don't have the skills, I'm just not cut out for this. I clearly, someone with my diagnosis could never be successful in this. So to answer your question, I don't have specific. I work with a lot of women who have been diagnosed, and most of them later in life. But I don't have a specific training around it. It's just, it kind of developed because I don't believe that they're cookie cutter strategies for anything in life. And so having to work with individuals, we had to come up with ways of getting them to do things and to build the success for themselves in a way that worked for them. And I think that's a lot what overcoming or working with ADHD is about. It's figuring out how you can do something differently, because you're not disabled, you're differently abled. So it's just figuring out ways of working that align with what you can do and how you go about doing it.
So when working with people who want to be leader, because I still believe that like not everyone can be a leader. It is something you can acquire, I think, through the proper training if you want it, but not everybody wants to be in a leadership position. So what is like the first step that you try to work with individuals, especially women who want to like grow in a leadership position? What is the very first thing that they need to focus on and consider to get that momentum going and be able to keep progressing that ladder?
I think it's firstly to figure out what your focus is in a particular moment, because a lot of the time we're trying to balance again the expectations of, in tech or in manufacturing, am I now here for my technical know-how, or am I leading a team? And again, as women, we naturally want to do well across the board. And I say this often, you cannot be everything to everyone. So if you're trying to be a good leader, focus on what's your priority in that moment. Are you leading your team, and in leadership, your vision and your strategy is crucial, or is your priority what you're bringing tech wise and your knowledge wise? Are you there to do the work? Are you there to manage? And it's just about figuring out where we are, and we're not the same thing all the time, and we certainly cannot be the same thing all the time. So I think it's a combination of using your expertise to bridge the gap between the strategy and the execution. So not getting caught up in areas we don't need to be, learning to trust your team. It's all part of learning, but there needs to be a vision. There needs to be the knowledge that everyone in the team, and yourself included, is working towards a central, united vision. So then decision making becomes easy. Is this moving me closer towards my goal or further away from my goal? And that's literally, that should be the deciding factor on every decision where you're unclear. Is this moving me closer to the vision or further away?
One of the things that keeps coming a lot more recently now is authenticity. So not just for people to be their authentic selves, but companies and different brands, because it's not so much, okay, here's what our products are, here are their features, this is what's going to solve your problem. It's actually, no, this is who we are as a company, these are our core values, this is what is important to us, and it's building that trusting relationship. When I first started out in this sector back in 2008, I was like warned, hey, when we go here, just keep your professionalism, maintain your professionalism. Because I remember maybe being one of 5 to 10 women on a trade show floor. And a lot of those women were hired to attract attention to the booth. So not all of them were there for the actual show. And I had to like just deal with the comments, have thick skin. And not everybody has that. Not everybody is as resilient or as gritty as everybody else. And one of the things is, you know, a lot of women had to sort of adapt kind of a different characteristic to be competitive in this field. And women were really competitive against each other instead of inviting each other to the table. But now we're seeing the shift where there's more support of each other and there's not as much competition. It's friendly competition, which is great to see. But do you have any advice for women on how they can embrace their authenticity while still commanding authority? Because again, it's that inauthentic switch that can happen sometimes where that confusion can come in. So like if you do have an edge to you and you try to switch it to be more soft, it could come across as flirtatious, like in my instance. Or if you're soft and then you try to be more assertive, it can come across as a little aggressive or bossy. Like how can women find that healthy balance? Is there anything that they can like practice or write out?
There's loads of things that we can practice, but I think it comes down to what we discussed right in the beginning was confidence. Confidence is being self-assured. So I think it's coming back and doing a bit of self-reflection and figuring out, why am I here? Why did I want to be here? What am I good at? Like, am I good at this? Then why do I feel the need to be having to make myself smaller or change myself to make someone else happy? And I understand that, you know, when it comes down to wanting the sale or having to do something to get a sale, you know, there's that air of desperation and you can feel that. But I think that at the same time as people get put off by this air of desperation, they're also attracted to the authenticity. And although we're talking about companies, there's this old, you know, it comes up often, is people buy from people. So we have to remember that you know, every relationship that you build is important. And I think if we come back to honoring ourselves and being comfortable with ourselves, leveraging our own unique strengths, trusting what we bring to the table, and being so okay with who we are that we don't feel the need to constantly have to temper ourselves to suit other people. Because confidence, as we said again, it's not aggression, it's not in your face, it's not having to be the loudest one in the room. There's that calm sense of confidence, and that can come from trusting yourself and, you know, being okay with who you are, which is ultimately authenticity.
So the other thing too with this sector is there were a lot of women that I talked to who thought they couldn't be a mom as well as a leader in engineering and manufacturing, because it can be quite demanding, especially if you're a leader of a major corporation. There's a lot of responsibilities and things that you have to juggle. How do you coach women to do just that, like juggle the demands of running a business while also maintaining a healthy personal life? Because it is that sense of doing it all, but you don't have to do it all. Like you can, there's ways to work around that. So what sort of coaching do you help women with to juggle between the two and find that healthy balance?
So this is exactly what I said before. You cannot be everything to everyone. So it's about deciding, who am I in this moment? Am I at work? Am I at home? And being fully present in that moment. Because otherwise we bring our personal stuff to work. And I'm not one of these who's like, you can't speak about your kids at work, or you can't say, oh, my kid's sick and I need time off. That's not what I'm meaning. I'm meaning, when you're at work, be present at work and be committed and get shit done. But when you're at home, you can't be thinking about work and bringing that stress and that tension or anxiety and, bringing work home. Your partner, your kids deserve to have you fully present in that moment. And a lot of this is assuming that we have a help, we have support. But that's also something that we don't often feel that we can ask for. And we should ask for support, whether that's free support or in exchange with family, or whether it's paid support. But it's what are my priorities? What can I realistically achieve? Because also, as women, we're hard on ourselves. We want to prove ourselves. We often feel like we have to do more than a man would in our position. And yet we're still dealing with an unfair balance of responsibility when it comes to the home front. So it's be realistic about what goals you have and what you can and can't achieve, and be present in whichever moment you are, and ask for help. There's more help out there than we actually realize.
I'm curious, do you work with companies as well too, and their teams to sort of provide guidance for them on how to be supportive with family members? Like, because I feel like that is part of a cultural thing too with the company you're working for. Like, some companies just, they don't care about your family or what you have to do. But there's other companies who are adjusting some of their policies and processes so that they can be more flexible with people who have family. So is there advice that you can give actual companies to better support?
I haven't. I mean, there's absolutely advice most of it, just the advice tends to be a human being. Like, I haven't worked with them. They're probably not going to hire me if I'm just going to come in and say, be a human being. But it's about realizing that if the balance societally is still skewed to mean that women have more responsibility at home, we have to factor that in somehow. And I'm not saying that it has to impact companies negatively. It's, let's just make certain allowances and let's treat people fairly. We're not, just so that women aren't disadvantaged before they walk through the door.
Yeah, I like that. I know a couple of women leaders who they will take their family on some of their business trips, not all of them, but they'll take them on some of their business trips, and they'll stay a couple days later, or they'll leave a couple days earlier, and they'll make it like a vacation, and they call it like a work integration. And then she's the CEO of Siemens, and she did a keynote speech at a women in manufacturing event. And she said, my email says I'm out of office. It doesn't tell them that I'm actually on a hayride with my grandson. She's like, you can just say that you're busy. You don't have to over explain yourself. And I feel like that's a thing that women
we have to constantly justify. I'm so sorry. I can't make it in. I have to work from home today because my kid is sick. We constantly feel like we're being asked to prove ourselves.
Yeah. Or
I'm not sure why that is.
The other thing too that I'm learning a lot is because I'm a very emotional person. I wear my feelings on my sleeves, and it's not good to do that if you want to be in a leadership position, because you can be looked at as a little bit crazy maybe, but or not effective or not reliable. So there is a point where you do have to dial some of that down. which can be hard for women. So are there any suggestions that you give women on how to really cope with that? Like what sort of practices do you have them do to really kind of keep their emotions in check? Because I feel like that is a big issue for a lot of us who do wear emotions on our sleeves. It comes out and it's not good. I know I worked at a company, and one of the girls that I worked with, we would check each other's emails before we hit sent, because we were like, how would you take this if you read this? No, you gotta change that. You gotta change that before. Yeah. So are there any practices like that you suggest to them?
There are lots of practices, and I think it comes down to, again, self-awareness and being comfortable in our own skin, so that we're not always on the defensive and we're not always trying to moderate ourselves. And so when we're stressed or there's a lot of tension and there's pressure at home and there's pressure at work, our nervous systems tend to get sort of out of whack. So there are practices that we can do on a daily basis, and some of them are like woo-woo and some of them are a bit airy-fairy, but some of them genuinely, you can feel the tension sort of dissipate in your body. And it can be breathing exercises or breath work or meditation and journaling. And I think a lot of it comes down to being okay with who we are, so that we don't feel like we have to moderate in a certain situation, or we don't feel like we're constantly having to question ourselves. And the more we become okay with who we are and trust that we're there because we earned that position, the less we start thinking about, okay, how is someone going to take that? Because bottom line is, what other people think of you is none of your business. What other people think of you is their business and actually has nothing to do with you. So we also think that we've been a problem or we've created a problem before someone has actually said to us, hey, I didn't like your tone, or hey, you were super emotional this morning. We think, oh, I got a little bit fired up, or oh, I was a little bit irritated this morning, and we start creating problems for ourselves. But if we actually, Mel Robbins is all over the press at the moment with her new book called Let Them. And there was another woman who wrote this beautiful poem a few years ago. And it was basically about, we can't control other people. We only have control over ourselves. So let them react however they need to react. And if it negatively affects them, it's their responsibility to tell you or to share with you how that impacted them. And then it's your decision to decide whether that is warranted and you can change that or make amends, or whether that's actually not your stuff. That's their stuff. But a lot of it comes from the confidence and being just okay with who we are and not constantly trying to change to be better for someone else, to make someone else more comfortable.
You can't be a people pleaser. That was one of the biggest things I was doing, as I was trying to make everyone happy, and I was getting burnt out. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I got to stop worrying about what people think of me. One of the things I think is helpful is the role of allies. So not just male allies, but also women allies, and getting mentorships and sponsorships. So let's get on the topic of male allies, because a lot of the women that I know, including myself, very grateful for all the men who are like, you got to stop doing that and just go for it. Stop overthinking it. I would not be where I'm at today without all of the guys in my life. So how can male colleagues and leaders really actively support to help women in these fields? Like, what are some of the things that they can do to help women build up their confidence?
Okay. So I'd love to just start by, it would be quite unfair or remiss of me to say the first place I'd start is at home. And if you're not equally splitting responsibility at home, and you're not supportive of your female partner in the home environment, to suddenly come and want to be super supportive in the work environment, is maybe a little bit misplaced. So,
Mm.
they say all good things start at home. But in the workplace, support the careers of the women around you. Speak up for equal opportunities. I don't think women are ever asking for unfair advancement. They're just asking for equal treatment and equal opportunities.
Yeah.
And then to speak up and to challenge the stereotypes or the gender biases as they come up, because it comes up, and women are often guilty too of the societal biases against women. We perpetuate them ourselves as well.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, and so I think for men, if they're truly wanting to be an ally, is to speak up, because it's one thing not to do something or perpetuate something yourself. It's another thing entirely to speak up against it and take an active role in trying to change that. Don't create a tension-filled workplace. So just create an inclusive workplace environment. So a lot of the cultural or a company culture is often determined by the majority. So if there is a male majority, it would be tending towards more masculine type activities or environments. And it's nice to just swing that sometimes, or to just make that a little bit more inclusive.
Mm-hmm.
And just, I suppose, acknowledge, maybe these guys are single. They don't have, wives and kids at home, but maybe it's just acknowledge the balance of responsibility with home and childcare in the situations with women in that workplace. Because a lot of the time, we're superwomen most of the time. Often we just want to be acknowledged.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point, though, because I think both men and women make assumptions about each other. So it makes the whole conversation a little bit awkward. So one of the things that we should stop doing is just assuming that something is on purpose or malicious or ignored. Like we do need to be willing to let that guard down and have conversations and talk to one of the books that I've read is called Crucial Conversations. It's a great book because it really does like help you take a step outside of your own personal experiences and learn how. Oh, I haven't read that one.
Radical Candor. How to get what you want by saying what you mean.
Yeah, I gotta read that book. But because I've always been one to do that. I would like take a look at a situation, misread someone's tone, and then assume that it was intentional, and they might have just been having a bad day or something happened before they came into work, and you don't take a step outside that when you take it so personally. So it's a really great book to really put your emotions in check and ask yourself first, okay, why did they respond this way? Is there something else going on? And then providing you like alternatives of how to approach that situation so you're not being offensive to either party, which is, I think, really helpful.
I think that we are so programmed, or just the nature is that we listen to respond rather than listen to hear and listen to absorb. And a lot of that comes down to just taking a breath and actually hearing what went on and what it's about rather than what we think it's about. We make up all the own shit in our minds.
Right. I had a woman on a while ago, and one of her suggestions was before you respond, take a pause. And she's like, with that pause, that will give you the time to really think, how to respond. It will give you the breath and everything. So I really strongly believe in that. I think also too is just, mentorships is extremely important because it opens up those conversations. And if you are a single person at home and you don't have that family, there are things that you can do within the space to support younger generations. So I'm a huge fan of First Robotics, and anything that has kids building stuff together, go there and have a conversation with kids and be that person for them, because that's really helpful as well too. Because I was at an event with one of my friends, and he's very outspoken. He's a great talker, very sociable, and he just gets so passionate. And there was a team of young kids that brought their robot to show off to all of the adults at this event. And there was one girl on the team, and she was standing in the background like this. And I kept asking her questions, and everybody just kept talking over her. And I'm finally like, can you guys just be quiet and let her talk? Like, I want her to answer my question. And I looked at my friend, I'm like, including you, like, just be quiet for a minute. And he just started laughing. He's like, I'm sorry, I get so excited. I'm like, I know you do. I want to hear her perspective. So she started telling me what she did for the team and how she did a lot of the project management. She brought people together. And I said, you have a very important mission ahead of you. And she's like, what's that? I'm like, you need to get more girls on the team. So don't stand in the back, use your voice. It's important. Get other women excited about this. And I was like, I want you to like bring more girls onto the team. And she's like, okay. And she ended up like relaxing and like being herself and laughing and smiling. But before that, she was just kind of crossed arm, and I don't think she felt included. And I was like, we got to let her talk. Like, let her talk. So be that person to pull the shy kid in the front and make them talk.
Love that. Absolutely love that.
So can you share any other success stories that you've had with women who overcame, their confidence issue and really thrived in a male-dominated industry? Like, do you have any more stories to share with us?
I can tell you my personal story.
Yeah.
I before I started coaching, an opportunity came across my lap in my 20s in packaging, and import and export, which in South Africa was very male dominated and mostly old white men, like 50s and 60s. And I was in my 20s. And it's daunting initially, but I think just the more that you do it, the more that you build that trust in yourself. I built the company to multi 7 figures, and at the end, you trust yourself. And we've spoken about it through this whole episode. It's that knowing that you're okay and that someone else's opinion isn't going to make or break who you are. That unshakable foundation. That's not to say you never doubt yourself or you never mess up or you do everything perfectly all the time. It's not that. It's just about learning to be okay with yourself despite when you mess up, and not feeling that outside validation, good or bad, is the true, at the core of who you are. So it's just, sometimes it's about pushing through. Sometimes it's just about taking the step, one foot in front of the other, and creating that for yourself.
Do you see like common traits with women who are really thriving and, doing well despite all of the adversity and the odds that face them? Like, what are some of the common traits you've noticed?
You said this word right in the beginning. It's resilience. It's that ability to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and keep going. Because life's not easy. Business is not easy. They always talk about the entrepreneurial roller coaster. And I don't want to go and like mislead anyone and say, oh, having your own business is always a bed of roses. It's not. It's sometimes really, really hard. But it's also mostly very simple. We overcomplicate it a lot ourselves. But what makes people thrive is this resilience, this ability to, despite what has been, to get up and try again. And that, I think, coupled with emotional maturity, that not taking everything personally and not having this mentality of it's everyone else's fault or someone messed up and, that blame or that victim mentality. It's not taking things so personally.
Yeah, I agree with that. I feel like that is a down or a disadvantage of social media, where everybody has this like victim mentality, and like I've seen so many videos out there with people just crying on the videos, and I'm like, what are you doing? Like, I'm not to like make fun of them or anything. Well, maybe a little bit, but it's like, why are you filming that? Like, just go for a run.
It's this we're taking what we think. So those people, and I'm speaking on behalf of them, I don't know them from a bar of soap, but we're told that's authenticity. That's not authenticity. You can be upset, but that's performance. That is
Yeah.
performing for an audience, which is exactly what social media is,
Mm-hmm.
in order to get something in return. But it's that performing and putting on a show. And authenticity is being truly yourself and owning the good and the bad, and not having to put everything on display for the sake of external validation or likes and follows and comments. It's about
Mm-hmm.
truly being yourself.
My mom has always taught me, like, there's always someone out there that has it way worse than you. And she's like, you can either dwell on it and have every day be horrible and suck, or you can figure out how you're going to take a step forward and continue to be happy and grow and just be a kind human being. And she's like, if we're all
Yeah.
sulking in a corner somewhere, we're not going to get anywhere. And this is my old Irish woman, German mom that said this, and she's just like, you can't keep suffering. You got to keep going. So that's advice from my mom. But I do want to get back to this imposter syndrome. So I've met a few women who are like, I'm not even going to say those words, because for people who don't understand what a syndrome is, like, it is a bunch of characteristics, and I just think of a medical issue that you need something for, like a prescription or something. I don't know. Like, I don't think syndrome is the correct word. So I want your opinion on, like, how can we stop using this word and really get women to, it's basically self-doubt. I think we should replace imposter syndrome
Self-doubt.
with self-doubt.
Yes,
So
I was going to say that.
what's your opinion on that?
The imposter syndrome, I think I also don't like the word syndrome, but it's that feeling of walking into a room or a situation or a business or an environment and feeling like you don't belong.
Mm-hmm.
And that comes from truly putting that feeling of whether you're going to belong outside of yourself. So it's giving away your power. And self-doubt is you're the only one who can change it. Someone
Mm-hmm.
else's opinion of you, someone else doing something for you, someone else telling you you're great, that's not going to change it. It's the work that we do on ourselves to reclaim the power, to reclaim the self-belief, to build the trust in ourselves through the daily actions, whether that be the self-care, nourishing ourselves, moving our body, taking the steps and doing the tasks in our business that we've been procrastinating on. It's doing what we need to do, showing up for ourselves and building that inner confidence, so that when we step into these rooms, these situations, these environments, whether or not other people think we belong doesn't affect us, because we feel like we belong.
There's a lot of women that I've talked to who get their fuel from people telling them that they don't belong or they can't do anything. I did talk to a woman engineer, and she's like, I'm kind of petty that way, where, like, if someone says I can't do something, then I just do it way better than them. And it just, she's like, I have this knack for proving people wrong. And I'm like, that's a great way to look at it, though. But I wanted to bring up that term imposter syndrome, because we talked about this before we went live. There is a commencement speech out there that I think everyone should look into. Her name is Reshma Sojani. I might be pronouncing her name wrong, so I do apologize for that. But she's the founder and CEO of Moms First, and also the founder of Girls Who Code. And she did this commencement speech in 2023 at Smith College, and she talked about bike face. So she's like, imposter syndrome's not a syndrome. It's actually a scheme to get women to not, like, fulfill their full potential. And she brought up this scheme of bike face. So when bicycles were first invented, they came up with this syndrome called bike face. And basically to prevent women from wanting to learn how to ride bikes. And it was just kind of like a strategy to oppress them so that they couldn't ride from point A to point B and like see different things.
Stay home, stay in the kitchen, make the house nice, put a bow in your hair for when your husband comes home, but don't leave the house, don't expand yourself, don't grow, because then you're going to start challenging perceptions. And yeah, you can't have that.
She compared that with today's imposter syndrome, and I just thought it was a really good commencement speech, and I think everybody should listen to it because it's just really interesting, the perspective. And I have met a lot of women. So if you're one of those women who have doubt, I have met a lot of women who are single moms, they're married moms, they are going to school and working and being a mom, or they're going to school and working. They switch careers later in life. Like, it really does come down to your belief in yourself and what you want to do and what your goals are. So, Lauren, if you had any advice for any women looking to pursue a leadership role, especially within a sector like engineering and manufacturing, what would that piece of advice be for them to pursue that and be successful at it?
I would start with the self-reflection and ask yourself why you want it. Because Simon Sinek wrote that book, Start With Why, but it comes down to, do you want it for you, or do you want it because you think you should? Because we are so programmed as women to do what we think we should do, which is the people pleasing, the society pleasing, our parents, our families, our partners, like taking the next logical step. But I think if you're wanting to do something, ask yourself why you want to do it. And if it's for you, then trust yourself, trust your achievements. If you wanted it, something inside of you is telling you that you have it, you can do it. So then it's just about moving forward, taking action. What's the worst case scenario? Like, there's that, did you die? Take a big leap. And if you get rejected or rebuffed or something doesn't go your way, it's okay. You can try again tomorrow, or you can dust yourself off and try again in a few months' time. Or you can just go back and say, you know what? I know that I'm great. And the fact that I didn't get chosen does not impact on my worth one iota. And just be okay with it. But it's start with why you want it. And if you truly want it for you, then just go for it.
Yeah. I have a daughter who's 21 and she's going to school for being a surgical nurse. And she just called me the other day and she's like, I just got fired from my job. And I'm like, okay. And I was like, are we okay? Or like, do you need to vent? And she said, no, I think I'm just going to look at it as an opportunity for me to like do something else with that spare time. And I said, that's a good way to look at it. I'm glad you're not freaking out this time like you did last time. But then she was talking about how she picked up someone else's shift and she's like, I don't know if I should text the guy. And I'm like, no, what you need to do is call him and say, thank you for the opportunity. I'm sorry this wasn't a fit. Do you have any constructive criticism for me so that, the next time around this can happen? And then, oh, by the way, I also picked up someone's shift. I just wanted to give you some notifications so you have time to fill the shift now and all this. And I was like, but always ask for advice so that you can apply it to the next situation. And she started saying, well, Mom, this happened. I'm like, Annie, that doesn't matter. Like, it wasn't your place of business. He put in the investment for the risk, taking on hiring you and hiring all the other employees. Like, he has the majority of the risk. So it's basically his decision. And all you can do is maintain that bridge instead of burn it. And that will help you professionally move forward. So I always tell people, like, if something bad really happens, yes, it's kind of awkward to go back and have conversations with those people, but in the end, it shows them that you're willing to learn and grow if you can ask that constructive criticism, as hard as it can be.
Use everything that happens to you as a lesson and an opportunity to learn something.
Yeah.
Because it truly is invaluable. All of us at some point in our careers have experienced some kind of setback or something that we found supremely embarrassing, or we were fired, or we didn't get the job we want, or we answered something ridiculous in an interview. And we look back now, and for most of us, we wouldn't change it because
Mhm.
it makes you who you are, and you learn from every opportunity in your life. You learn probably more from the bad things and the challenges than you do from the good things.
Yeah.
But if we look at as life as this never-ending journey of self-improvement and just trying to get a little bit better every day in every way, I'm getting better and better.
I tell people to shoot for 1% better every day, and then you'll keep
Yes,
moving
yes.
forward. Well, Lauren, this has been a really great conversation and fun. I'm glad that I had a chance to meet with you and talk to you. I think what you're doing is important, even though you're not quite in manufacturing and engineering. You're still helping women with that confidence that's needed to really, gauge their performance and also their path to leadership roles. So I do want to give you an opportunity to ask our listeners a question. So if you had one question for our audience, what would that big ask be for them?
I would just ask you to reflect. And if you're listening to this conversation, something about the title must have spoken to you. There's something about confidence. And I
Mhm.
think take a moment and ask yourself why that is. Why that you feel you're less than, or that you have to improve in some way. Is it holding you back? Is it just something we're all told we need to be more confident? But it's really looking at, again, what does this mean for you? What can you do for you, rather than what you think you should do because someone told you should do it, or because it's something that society expects. It's let's just
Yeah.
have some reflection and get back to being our innate selves, our true, authentic, confident, worthy selves.
I love that. Well, if women need help with, kickstarting their confidence, or if companies need some sort of course or team building activity, what is the best way they can get in contact with you?
I think the easiest is probably reach out to me on LinkedIn or Facebook. I'm on Lauren Clack on both those platforms. On Instagram, if you like, Lauren_Clack. And just pop me a message. And I'm happy to offer anyone who's interested or curious, if they just send me the word Mavens, I'm happy to offer them like a free strategy session, and just
I
to uncover some blocks, or dig into something that they felt was interesting in our time together. Yeah.
I love that. I'll be sure to remind people of that. I had another guest that did that, and I hope it helped get some really good leads for you and connections. So, for anyone tuning in, feel free to reach out to Lauren Clack on LinkedIn. If you missed some of this episode, you can definitely catch the replay on Mavens of Manufacturing YouTube channel. So be sure to subscribe to that. We're also on all of the podcast channels like Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So check those out. And then if you are looking for a fresh way to express your brand, stay tuned for our sponsor, Fresh Horizons. They do all of my Mavens branding. They're family owned. They're really, really cool individuals. They're from my local town, and I just love them to pieces. So check out the sponsorship. I hope you guys have a wonderful Monday and a productive week. Stay kind, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye, everyone.
Yes, Megan. Bye.
This episode of Mavens has been sponsored by Fresh Horizons Group. Fresh Horizons Group is a family-run company that was founded on the premise of helping organizations and businesses better tell their story through high-quality branded apparel and promotional items. Freshen up your brand by contacting Fresh Horizons today at freshhorizonsgroup.com.